Right, welcome. We're here. We made it. Our FLT call number 82. Got it right this time. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we just got ourselves working on there. We're coming live from, we're semi near each other, myself and Richard. I'm in Portugal. Richard is in Spain at the minute, which is two very different countries, but we're like close. If you zoom up to about on a map, we're at least an inch apart, which is really good. It's really nice to have all of our familiar faces with us this time round as well. I think we've got a couple of new people, at least one, but I think they're driving and things like that. So I think they're just going to be listening. So I'm pretty comfortable and happy with everyone else that is on this call. If you're new to listening back to this, myself and Richard, and co-host on this FLT call, we started this really because we really felt there was huge changes going on in the world. We actually began with just sense-making groups, just spaces to safely discuss what was occurring in and around the planet. Then quickly we discovered that financial stability is a big thing within sovereignty. And with crypto that was growing and growing and growing, we really decided to hold a space where we could just discuss that in its singularity, rather than trying to discuss what's going on in the world and finance and crypto. They are, whilst inexplicably linked, they're very different conversations. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. But in recent times, we've kind of gone full circle back around, re-bringing in that sense-making aspect. And so whilst for the last 18 months, a lot of these have been, let's say, crypto and finance focused calls and groups, we're really bringing it more into a sense of sense-making and community. It'll still always have that financial undercurrent within it, because when we live in a capitalist society, or a place where the majority of goods and services are procured through pieces of paper with funny scribbles on them, then it's an important aspect of us having a sovereignty. So I want to set that framing because it is something that we've been changing over recent times. And I'm going to come to you guys for questions, but last time on the last call, we were really covering, I've been using the word preparedness. There's many different ways that we can use it to describe it, but we've been looking at these financial steps that we've got. And one of the key questions we want to ask on this call is, are you financially gambling? And we chose that particular point. We'll come to it on the slides later. We'll come to it on the steps later. It's kind of in the middle. And it's this very strong, let's say, inflection point for the steps. And we don't want people to fall down from it. We've really been looking at this and looking at where's the safest plateau that people can be. And that is at financial stability. And so we want to know, how do we help people get to that? Because once you're at that spot, you can weather a lot of storms. That's step number 5. So that's the core that we want to go through here, because we're going to be picking up what's going on in and around the world. We're going to come back to questions in a moment. I just want to check first, Anthony L, who has joined, just because I don't recognize the name. If you give us a thumbs up to make sure you can hear. And if you are new, I know you've put in your questions, you simply want to listen, but we would love if you're okay, even just in the chat, just kind of explain where your crypto journey is at, so we can kind of know roughly where to place you with regards to language, or what we might cover and talk about. We try and make all of these calls open to everybody. So we don't want to be too techy. We also don't want to be too overly simplistic. So it's just good to know in our community where people are at. If you're cool to do that, then please just chuck it in the chat. For everybody else that's on here, recognize all faces. So what I would love is a quick round robin of people, a quick check-in for 1 minute. I'm going to go Rod, Gordo, Tim, Paul, Alan, and then Anthony. If you wish to share, you can. What may have been coming up for you in the last week? If it's nothing, that's cool. But also, if there's anything in particular, just love to just cover on this call, besides this ongoing preparedness conversation, and Rich is going to do a bit of a macro view of what's going on. So, Rod, if you want to pick it up first, anything for yourself, brother, that you'd love to have discussed?
Yeah, hi guys, good to see everybody. I've got Tom, my eldest son, listening in today.
Hey, Tom.
I'm at his house.
Hey guys.
Tom's into crypto and has been for longer than me. How long for? About don't know, 3 years probably, since the beginning almost then, or since the early days. So I'm at his house. I'm surrounded by cats, so you might see some cats on occasions making an appearance.
We like cats.
Yeah, I've not really done much at all this week, other than moved a big chunk of fiat out of the banking system and into somewhere else, which is, I don't know if it's going to be any safer, but it's building societies that aren't actually banks, so it's mutual societies. I don't know why I felt that was a safer place to put it, but that I did, and that's why I did.
That's a good. So at least you've done something. That'd be really good then. And you're happy if we kind of discuss that as well, because it's been a big thing in Richard's world, I know, for like who underwrites and who funds who. So are you cool if we bring that into the mix? Do you mind sharing which, was it one building society or multiple ones?
It was nationwide, because I've had an account with them for eons.
Cool. All right. I know there's a couple of other people on this call as well that bank with Nationwide, so we'll see. No promises on what we'll get up, but at least, unless we can put something on the table, we can't even investigate. So thank you very much for sharing that, Rod. Cheers. And welcome, Tim, in the background as well. You're welcome to come on the camera where we don't bite. Good that you're there nonetheless. Cool. Another Tim. And then we'll come to Gordo if you're there.
Hello.
Hi, Tim.
Hi. How you doing? How you doing, guys?
Yeah. Thank you.
So, I suppose I'm just continuing to DCA into the major cryptos. I'm just interested to get your thoughts or your feedback, your opinions on sticking with that strategy with the markets the way they are, with a lot of headwinds that we're facing in the macro environment, and what alternatives possibly would there be to DCAing or not DCAing, or stopping completely, pausing, whatever.
And ultimately, the question there then is, like, we're looking at long-term. I mean, DCA is a long-term strategy for portfolio building. So the reason you're DCAing is because you're looking at a long-term solution to put your money somewhere that over the course of time will do better than it will in your traditional means. Mm-hmm. So you're asking what other things may someone do, including nothing other than DCA?
Yeah, because of the potential issues maybe around regulation, crises in the fiat markets around the world at the moment, what that may bring, and what might how might that affect us, particularly with things we're not even thinking about at the moment, or I'm not thinking about it at the moment. Potential dangers. Just DCA, as you say, it's a long-term strategy. I think prices are pretty good at the moment. The value is there to.
What are you DCAing into?
Predominantly Bitcoin and a few of the upper layer ones, the top tier layer ones.
Okay, so like layer ones in the top 10 of all tokens.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Oh, brilliant. That's a really good question. Is that Tim? Thank you very much for that. Gordo, I'm going to come back to you because I can't even see you on the camera. I'm going to assume you're not there. Kevin and Jack are audio only. Paul, do you want to share? Oh, Gordo is there. Gordo, you're on in a second then. Paul, do you wish to share anything for yourself, what's been going on, or what's in your mind at the minute?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I've just eaten.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, trying to keep abreast of everything that's happening in the markets, but I think actually the last call came at a really good time. Give me that kind of wake up call, I think, to kind of like just look at things again and take a little bit of risk off the table and move some into safer passive income streams. But also to kind of just reflect on where the whole journey that I've been on since being on FLT, really. So it was really good to kind of do that. I'm definitely feeling a bit more focused now about things. Kind of feel like I took my eye off the ball a little bit. So thanks for that. That last call was really, really useful.
Good.
Not a question as such, but more kind of maybe some suggestions as to where you guys get reliable information on in terms of markets and things like that, because you follow a few people and one person saying there's all this money waiting on the sides, the Fed are going to pivot, this is a great opportunity to buy now. But then you got other people saying, well, there's going to be a pump to 21,000 for Bitcoin and then it's going to drop to 14, and you kind of like everything in between. So it's like, I guess, trying to figure out who's reliable and who's full of shit, if you know what I mean. So that would be my question, I guess.
Well, it's definitely a good talking point. I'm going to tell you this, though. I don't have the answer, because if I did, I'd be in a very different space. But it is a really good question to ask. And I think ultimately it's like, how do you start to parse through data? And it's sense making of people that speculate.
Yeah. Sense making, isn't it? It's been able to.
Yeah.
I think we're going to come on to it a bit. It's being clear about what your objectives are and being able to objectively listen to people that are offering differing bits of information, but you have to play the what if scenario a lot of the time, particularly at times like this where there's so much uncertainty. It's like, what if this happens and what if this happens, and that then means that you're never going to know the answer, I guess, but at the end of the day it helps you to make a decision one way or the other, and hopefully it tempers the decision so you're not going one way or the other. You'll be able to, it allows for planning, I think, if you can sort of sense make, because you're kind of waiting for the right time. So we'll talk about it a bit more.
And that's why we brought sense making back in, because it's a skill. And I remember a teacher saying to me, all skills are learnable. Talent's not learnable, talent's talent. But sense making is absolutely a skill. And the more we can discuss it and have practical ways that we do it, the better it is, no matter where you apply it. Gordo, come on with all those colours. Thank you very much, Paul, for sharing that. It doesn't matter whether it's questions or thoughts. This is like, we are online, but we're still a community at the end of the day, and we're all feeling things, whatever it is. So the more we can discuss it, the better it is. Hit us with it, Gordo, what's on your mind? And then I'm going to come to Alan. Kevin and Jack, if you want to put anything in the chat, you're welcome to. Elaine, yourself as well, just so that people can start thinking. Go for it, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you. I don't know what I've got in my mind. I'm just in between at the minute. I'm kind of like not really doing much research and stuff, and just going with what I've got, kind of with the few things that I'm in at the minute. There's a lot of talk about crypto not being a good place to be at the minute. And I'm kind of like, well, I kind of want to be in it, and I believe in it. So it kind of, it's going against a bit of what I'm, where my heart is. But I understand that, yeah, we can, crypto might be heading down still before it comes up. And we see, like, with all the stuff that the SEC are doing and all this, they're just trying to, there's the forces that be trying to ruin it, aren't they, to a degree, or make it very difficult for us. So I am wondering what to do. I heard on some interview that I've got quite a lot of XRP, and someone the guy in this thing was just saying what a ridiculous coin that is. It's just the most stupidest thing ever. And I'm thinking, all right, well, it's gone up quite a bit, so I'm thinking I might just get rid of it. But in general, apart from everything else, it was great to meet up the other month. I'm still buzzing off that, to see everyone's faces. I've been living off grid for a bit down in Wales, doing some building work, and then I've busted my hand up. That's why I'm back in nearly cut it off with a chainsaw. So, so that's why I'm back in Manchester at the minute. But yeah, I'm just generally I'm just excited about moving forward and kind of learning more about crypto as always, and and this financial sovereignty that you talk about. It's just the most important thing to me. Well, sovereignty in general is the most important thing, but I think you start with financial sovereignty and everything else falls into place. I think it gives you a lot of freedom. So I don't know if I'm making much sense there. I've got my tea on. That's
It's okay. Well, leave it at that. I understand where you're at with stuff, and we can weave that into everything for today's call. Make sure it's a bit more on point. Thank you very much for that, Gordo.
Cheers, mate.
Jack's put a question in. Wants to talk about adjusting a portfolio in the current economic situation we're in to better handle the downside. So basically, we're looking at, I suppose, it's that same question: long-term prep, given these extreme circumstances that we're in. So because we've got a couple where we're already at 20 past. If anyone's got any other bits and bats, just put them in the chat. As ever, if you've been on these calls, or for Tom or Tara that's just on here, we're an open group. So if you've got something to say, you can kind of click the raise hand button, or if you're on camera, just put your hand up. Anyone's free to comment, to question, or anything like that. Me and Richard are not the oracles. We're not financial advisors. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. But we're here to discuss, and it's the space that we hold and the questions that we have and the way we discuss it. That really is the juice of what keeps us all together. So just all know you can, if you're new, you're welcome to participate in any way that you wish. So to summarize that then, to be fair, all the questions, have you just written them down as well then, Richard?
Yeah, I've got notes, yeah.
You need to post them in the chat so that we can all see them again, just as a bit of a recap. And I know that this, the start of this call, Rich wanted to kind of just run through some of those macro factors. We are going to keep kind of coming back to these financial steps. We built them purely so that we could have a framework for each person to look at, because without a path forward, we're just wandering through a jungle, really. So they kind of help steer and guide, and ultimately to help keep on point, so you can see where you're at and how you get to the next space. Someone else has also messaged here about handling things emotionally and mentally too. Be good to discuss, and I can interpret that two ways. One is the emotional and mental roller coaster of just investing, and then there's the emotional and mental roller coaster of the sense making of what's going on in the world right now, because it's difficult, which is why earlier Richard talked about the more we can sense make, the more it's the easier we can deal with some of these swings and some of these wild pivots that we feel inside ourselves. Have you posted those, Rich? I can't see them.
Just moving them here, mate. So I'm
okay, cool.
So.
Cool. Yeah. So Tim was talking about dollar cost averaging strategy given the macro environment, which is what everything else is going on. As a result of last week's call, Paul's made some changes and diversified, I'm going to guess, a little bit, and taking some money off the table for some of the higher risk stuff. And I definitely think it would be good to bring in XRP. And sovereignty, like you said, Gordo, is the most important thing. And Jack was talking about long-term prep given the circumstance. So loosely speaking, these are all very similar threads of conversation. So do you want to share, Rich, all the thoughts and everything? He's a master macro man, Richard himself. Give us some of your learnings and thoughts over the last few weeks, because I know you've been doing a lot of. It's been very present in your mind.
Yeah, I think. I suppose. I mean, everyone's, I think, aware of, inflation. Been aware of inflation for a long while, and you've got the war, and there's just an ongoing sort of onslaught of things that are happening in the world that affect everybody, and it hits the news, and it's affecting everybody. But in terms of financial, the financial impact, I don't think we've ever been in a time in our lifetimes, certainly not mine, where we've had so many converging things all happening at the same time. And I think the thing that that pushed me over the edge a little bit was just the whole Nord Stream thing over the weekend, which you can decide what happened with that or not, and then the whole Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank thing as well. So if anyone doesn't know, the Nord Stream is basically could be an escalation in terms of the potential war turning into a war. Certainly, I think there's a lot of different things going on with that, and it seems to be covering almost common knowledge at this point that the Americans actually did it. So to me, that's not just about a war between the West and Russia, it's kind of a statement about how America wants to kind of control and influence European energy. So that has such a massive thing, because it moves on to around about the hegemony of the US dollar, and I think that's really ultimately what this is about. It's about, and then that then bleeds into the currency war that is currently playing out, which is you've got Russia and China looking to create an alternative to the dollar in terms of trying to push a reserve currency, but they're actually backing it by something, gold. You know, they seem to be buying a lot of gold up, and they actually seem to be backing their own currency up. So, you know, just in the space of two things there's 3 or 4 different things that are sort of converged into things that are really affecting the markets. The whole Credit Suisse thing is potentially quite worrying, because I saw a quote that said the other day that Lehman Brothers kicked off the last financial crisis in 2008-9, and they were exposed to a 600 million book that went wrong on their balance sheets. Credit Suisse has got double that, I believe, and that's just Credit Suisse, and the contagion that could create means that any bank that's got exposure, because they all interlend and do all these financial instruments and things, and then it will be a case of whether someone like AIG is my understanding, which is the insurance company, is going to cover all these things. So there's a whole domino effect kind of waiting in the background, basically. And so that nothing seems to have happened other than they're kind of saying everything's fine, don't worry about it, it's this, that, and the other. But I think there's been a bit of a run on Credit Suisse, as far as I understand. And, you know, as we've talked about before, money markets, they're human emotions. So as soon as people panic, it's just that, you know, that's all markets, that's all money markets are, and trading. It's influenced by human behavior. And so there's that. And then obviously the Bank of England had to come to the rescue of the pensions sector. The pensions were going to get margin called in the UK, and they had to pump 65 billion into the system, basically, in order to stop pensions from collapsing, which could have been, as you know, a massive thing. But it just goes to show the only thing they can do is pump more money into the system, which ultimately, what does that do? It doesn't stop inflation, which is what they really want to kind of curb at the moment. And we've already got inflation, we've got a recession. So there's lots of different things going on there at the moment. And that's without any kind of the regulatory stuff that seems to be happening in the US at the moment as well, in terms of trying to regulate crypto. So like I think Paul was saying, it's like there's lots in terms of the crypto side of things. It kind of feels like, is this bullish or is this bearish? What does it actually mean? And what I came to realize, addressing Paul's question, I think, is that when you first start listening to people, you have to know if your strategy is aligned to it. If you're a day trader and you listen to some people on Twitter, what you're going to find is that they are talking from the standpoint of day trading, and so they can say this is bullish, it's going to do this, and that will be how they the language that they speak. Do you remember? I don't know if you still follow him, Dan, Crypto Kirby. Remember that guy?
Yeah. What does he say? Let's get this crypto.
Yeah. He you know, he does the clickbait stuff, but I used to follow him quite closely but what he's actually talking about a lot of the time is leverage trading. So if he's leverage trading, a leg down in the market that wouldn't bother you if you were holding, you know, mid to long term, it's not going to bother you. But to him, it's the end of the world. It's like the bomb's going to drop, you know, because that's the way he trades, basically, and that's the way he invests, and that's the language he then speaks. But then I suppose what I'm more interested in these days is listening to people, because my strategy is not day trading. It's an income stream for me that I'm working on, but it's not a long-term thing. I don't think anyone here is really looking at that. So when you're kind of looking at all this news, you kind of really have to look at it from the perspective of, I assume, if we've made investments, how are these investments going to be made? and asking a question of ourselves from a sense-making perspective is, well, really, what does it mean to me if any of these things happen? You know, so you're trying to, I think at this stage, what we're really trying to encourage is, trying to use my language right here because Daniel corrected me earlier. It's like, if I think the way we decided to frame it was to say, am I financially gambling, and do I actually know what that actually means? And one of our definitions of financially gambling in the financial steps that we've kind of developed says that if an income stream, if I have an income stream and that goes for whatever reason that could be linked to any of these factors we've talked about, you know, if the recession really hits and my business takes a dive, or inflation is infecting the business that I've got a job with, and I lose that income stream. Any of these macro factors can affect the main income stream I have, and therefore, what does it mean from the point of view from me actually being able to spend my pay my bills, and also kind of protecting any kind of, you know, am I hedged enough in terms of safety in my my investments? And so any of those things, because we use the term financial gambling, you might think investing in something risky is financially gambling, and it is, but the reality is financially gambling can be framed in a different way where we don't actually know that we're financially gambling. So I don't know if anyone wants to chip in or talk about any of these other macro factors in terms of things they've heard about. I know Rod was talking about the forum, the Bank of England forum. I'm not overly familiar with that, but that'd be an interesting thing to talk about, just framing what people understand is actually happening out there in terms of the big factors that can affect them. But I think what me and Daniel really feel a responsibility for is really asking questions of ourselves. Are we burying our heads in the sand a little bit, and are we prepared enough? And have we taken the steps that enough to prepare ourselves? And if we're asking that question, is everyone else in our community doing that as well? And that's the sense of responsibility we kind of feel, and that's what we talked about, you know, that we wanted to make the thread of this call about. Right, Dan?
Cool. I like that. A lot of information there. All I'm going to do is summarize one thing, and then I would like to kind of open it up a little bit. Because you got to remember, guys, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and all the recent times, me and Richard just keep saying, what are we doing? Like, what? And it's never, well, obviously it's never been about money. We've never charged anything, but like, we love doing it. But at the same time, you reach a point where like, we've got something here. There's something that's really, we're interested in it. We've got a really nice community. There's good conversations, but then we're like, well, what's the outcome? Once of a day, well, let's just move forward and enjoy it. And so I'm going to share this tiny little concept so you can kind of begin to see it. And we're not beautified this, and we're not bothered at this stage, because we know you guys know that we'll tidy it all up when it's ready, because we're still in this kind of storming, forming, norming. But it's easier sometimes because we're visual people. So the steps run from left to right, and anyone that's done the program will know these are just slightly more advanced versions from the steps we first made. We're just going a bit deeper into it. And I've highlighted this one in red because this is the conversation today. Are you financially gambling? And we're not interested in anything beyond this point. So much so that I'm actually just going to put a column in. It doesn't matter what's higher than here. I said at the beginning that financial gambling is the precursor to financial security. And I said to Richard, how would one know if you're financially gambling? These kind of ones, these first three here are fairly easier to understand. Financial ruin, I'm in debt and I'm getting more and more into debt. Financial dependency means I'm earning now, and I've got my my debt to a manageable level. I'm in control of it. A financial solvency is similar to dependency, but it also means I've got a little bit of money left at the end. Oh, it says it there at the bottom. A little bit of spare change left. And so complacency then is the next one on from that, where you suddenly feel, because you're out of this initial level of pain, that you've got things are good. And things are good, obviously. But You know you're here because if something occurs that you did not expect, that within a month you'd find yourself back here. And one of the key things we keep asking ourselves is, how do we do our little bit to just attempt to try and not allow that to happen? Because one of our mentors said, the most important thing, or the worst thing that can ever happen with the steps, is you get to somewhere like here, something happens, and you're back to here. And he'd had it a couple of times, I remember him saying, or you might end up back here. But basically, don't move down. Doesn't mean you have to keep moving up. You can get to here and be very happy. You could get to here and be very happy, so long as you understand what the potential problem would be. And that's what we kind of want to have as this thread. And we will probably continue this, because at the beginning of this call, we kind of realized that at this step here, what makes this step such a strong step is the word security. You could argue that this is the lowest point of financial sovereignty. Beyond here is just like financial sovereignty version 2, version 3, version 4, just stronger and stronger, because at this level here, which is the 5th level, you can weather storms. And at these levels here, you're usually reliant on something major, and depends what you've defined as security, because it is down to you. How much cash do you need in the bank? How long will that last you for? Understanding why you're protected. And these can be really big questions to be asking if you're here, and we get that. But for this call, that's what we kind of wanted to begin and frame. And rather than talking about this, it's easier to kind of find out, are we financially gambling? Because you can be here, but think you're at this level.
Yeah.
So, and Paul's a perfect example. Paul just shared on the last call where we, in a way, we semi kind of covered some of this. He started to make some changes. I've been re-looking at this because I've become aware myself recently, and this is just in transparency, that there's certain aspects of my life where I'm aware that I'm aware of information and I haven't taken action. And I started asking why. And some of it's life and stuff gets in the way. But the reality is the pain of what I think's present, I believe is too far in the future. And I actually think that that's my psyche lying to myself about it. So now I'm aware of it, I'm going to do something about it. But if I'm in that space, and I'm doing some things that I'm not doing some things I should have done, then potentially other people are as well. So the simplest question we can ask is, are you financially gambling? If so, where, why, and how can we stop it? So that's the main thing I kind of wanted to summarize as that thread that we want to take through this. Richard shared the macro factors, which are all these things that are occurring that we can't really do much about, but they impact us. And all of you have asked questions that ultimately are based in and around those. So I wanted to rerun through them. Now I would, well, actually, before we go any further, does anybody have anything they wish to particularly say on that point, on these steps or anything before we go further? I'd love to discuss the Bank of England thing and the citizen stuff. So Rod, if you're cool to just share what you are aware in a minute, but I'd love first to just give any space for people to come in with questions or thoughts. All good. Seeing if anybody's unmuted. Okay, cool. So, Rod, are you happy to, just because you shared it in the group, just sharing a little bit more on what that Bank of England Citizens Forum is and what you've got out of it or could share from it?
Yeah, that's going to be quite easy.
Okay.
I was very disappointed by it. It was supposed to have been a forum where questions could be asked directly of the governor of the Bank of England from citizens.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it was kind of stage managed. So I've only attended a couple of the forums, and what I found was it sounded to me like the questions were loaded. I don't know if this is true, but it certainly sounded as if they were the sort of questions that the Bank of England wanted to answer and not the ones that they didn't want to answer, which, just pangs of rigging and being typical of a major institution. To have the opportunity to directly interface with the director of the Bank of England should have been great, but sadly it wasn't for me. And that's about it, really. But I mean, you know, I posted in the link in the chat the link to it, and I think anybody can sign up. So people might have a different opinion of it to me. I'm very cynical, I'm afraid to say.
I think it probably smacks of well, it kind of just, I guess, tells of the arrogance kind of the people that control the supply of money at the moment, right? That they're not kind of like it's a foregone conclusion about this is the way it is, rather than the effect it has. You know?
Just trying to build a poll in the background just to kind of see.
It's not in the background. I could see it. don't go on that other tab, mate.
Yeah, here we go. It's good if I didn't write something really bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then let us is there, Paul, are you still eating, Paul? Are you happy to just share for me? So I'd love to understand a little bit. What I'm really interested in is we're trying to find what are the things that make a person go, okay, that impacts me and I'm going to do something about it. Because you did last week, I'd love to you also said I'm in a better place now, and I'm curious if last week left you potentially a little bit wobbled, which is part of that question and part of that process sometimes. So if you could just share a little bit for yourself about like last call to this call, what happened back then during the week and up to now.
Oh, good question. I guess it was kind of complacency more than anything. I took my eye off the ball a bit, really, and kind of just sort of let it sort of tick away in the background, and lost sight of. I guess I've been doing a bit of kind of, well, what I think that last call did really was it kind of forced me to take the time to kind of reflect on the mistakes that I've made, but also appreciate how far I've come in the last couple of years, and but to kind of look at those mistakes and learn from them and say, okay, right, well, why did I make those mistakes, and how am I going to learn from that, and kind of use this opportunity to actually, with all the kind of uncertainty which is going on, is actually, okay, how can I bring some certainty back into what I was trying to do, and really kind of just look back at, okay, well, what was my plan? What am I trying to achieve? Why am I doing it? You know, what are my values around this? And just put the time in that it needs and that it deserves, really. I think you said it was a while ago, something like, you know, kind of give, if you were working, you know, for a client, you know, you'd put the time and effort in to do a good job, and you'd put the time in needed in order to justify the financial return. And I'd stopped doing that. Crypto was just kind of become this thing that was just ticking along in the background, and I kind of just thought, it's all going to go to the moon, and I'll just sit here and wait to become rich. And it's like, well, all this uncertainty. And then that call last week kind of all just came to a head, and I was like, okay, right, I need to really sit down and start thinking about this again and simplify just my approach, and start looking at more short-term, mid-term and long-term as well, but take that longer-term approach, which is kind of what I'd taken my eye off, really. Was caught up in the hype a lot and forgot where my starting point was, and kind of got too excited, too far ahead of myself, and that's what led to those mistakes, really. But yeah, definitely needed that kick up the arse and just that opportunity to refocus.
And we all need that sometimes, no matter what it is. So what I would love, and we'll just use a chat for this, yes or no, if you're happy, that's all I want, yes or no. Do you give your, I'll just use the word income streams, portfolio, whatever you want, really. Everything besides your job. And because that's the key thing, you obviously have to give your job the time, because most of us don't get paid. If you're in a job space, you exchange time for money. Yes or no, do you give your portfolio, your crypto, your income streams the time that they deserve feed you whatever you get out of them. I'd love it if people could just put their answer in there. I'm sure people will put more than yes or no, but it'll just give us a flavour. It'll take me 5 minutes to build a bloody poll, so you might as well just chuck them all in there. We're not 200 people. That's what I would love, because to share where I was sharing earlier for myself, I definitely give the time to my investments, but something what Paul just said there was a little bit like me. There's like a little section within the whole thing that I had stopped giving the attention to, and some of it is macro events. And partly I do that. I think I did that because I know Richard does a lot of it and shares, which is just lazy of me a little bit. I could justify it and say it's proxy sense making, maybe, but the reality is I turned my attention off it, and because I think it got a bit overwhelming, and so the first step to anything is owning that, to then be able to saying it, to be able to own it.
Well, I think that's the power of the community a lot of the time. I mean, it's like it used to be the case that I used to consume so much information that it would almost it would like drive me into inaction, because I'd be like, I don't know what to believe or anything like that. And then the power of the community and spending time with Daniel and stuff, when someone is similar in a lot of ways, but is able to make decisions in a different way, and you can talk about things, and then that's how you sense make, right? If Daniel's got one approach and I've got another, then we can talk about and sense make each other to be able to make a better decision. So I think that's the power of the community, right? And that's why these things, I think, are so valuable, because it helps us to move through these things without trying to come up with all the answers ourselves. But I think at the core is we can consume the information, and I think seeing all these answers here, the only thing that stops people from committing as much as they feel like they should is the fact of really, really knowing where they are and where they want to get to, because people aren't kind of sure. And that's why I think something like these steps, at least you've got a framework in order to kind of move through, which kind of, you have to tell truth to yourself, right? You know, and then you can start consuming information that is coming from the point of, well, if this and then that, then I can make my own decision about it, because I'm sure about my decision at that point, right? So I think that's the most important thing, and kudos to everyone to sharing as they do in this group, because it's not easy sometimes, and sort of, you know, admitting we made mistakes and stuff. And I can attest to the fact that I've fallen down these steps a number of times myself. But once I started to really use them in the right way, I know something that happened to me in the last year that really stopped me falling down as I did before, because I put some of the things in place. But
I knew I recognized you from somewhere.
Yeah.
Bottom of them steps again. Picking ourselves up, going, oh, we're back here.
Bad and bruised. Yeah, looking at each other, wondering how it happened. Yeah. But so, yeah.
Sorry, Rich, do you want to carry on then?
No, I just I think no, I think I've said it all there. I think it's just being truthful with yourself in the first place, and that's why that financial gambling step is so key. Is because you are complacent at that level, and I think crypto has a lot to answer for in terms of a lot of people's approach to this, where you know, stocks and shares are a little bit more, can feel a little bit more exclusive, right? And crypto has felt more inclusive, which is great, from democratizing finance. And that's why I believe, you know, the great steps we can kind of make. But at the same time, when we're in a bull market, everyone feels like a genius, because it doesn't matter what they do, invest in something, it goes up, in crypto particularly, right? In stocks as well, but when everything's in a bull market. But I think what that does, unfortunately, it gives everyone a false sense of security, and you then become complacent because you've made money and you haven't been through this cycle before, and so you do potentially fall down those steps. So I think where we are at the moment is, we use that phrase, treasure what you measure, right? And that's like, you know, that goes to the question you've just answered. It's kind of like, what are you measuring, and are you giving it enough attention as you would, you know, what does your future self actually ask? Do you value what's going to happen in the future? Because if you don't value it, and you're not measuring it right here and now, it's the universe is just going to say, well, you're not showing the respect that the money your future self needs, and so therefore, the net effect is you potentially fall back down these steps. So I think, yeah, kudos to everyone at this point for recognizing that at this point.
So, keeping on this kind of thread and looking at, and I'm going to make sure we're going to come back to the question on dollar cost averaging. I'm going to make sure we cover XIP, and I'm going to make sure we're covering emotions, which was someone's question in there, and also on kind of like the dollar cost average question. What do we do? But to answer all those questions, I really want to reiterate about this financial security. So I said to Richard, okay, Richard, imagine I don't know anything. How would I know how to define financial security? And he said, well, it's really easy. You define it. Now, there's two sides to this. On the one hand, I might only know a little bit of generic financial knowledge and information, because these levels here are the levels where, how many percent of society exist at? Well into the 90s, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then people kind of trickle up into here, but then you're kind of allowed to get up into here. You make some mistakes because it's complacency, and then you go back down again. So this is where everyone's at, which means the knowledge needed to understand finance isn't even there. It's only at this level here where you've even got a little bit of money to do something with it. So all the growth, real growth that you can sustain and keep, happens going from 3 to 5. I thought I counted that wrong. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, good. Thought so. So then the question becomes, if you only know a little bit of information, you might define E, not incorrectly, but too small, or miss some variables. And we gave an example when me and Rich were chatting earlier, was a good question to be it would be about multiple currencies. Do you hold currencies do you hold money in different currencies? And if so, how much? Well, that really changes a little bit dependent on your circumstance. So, for example, I'm a British person, but I predominantly earn in dollar. So it doesn't matter that I'm British. The vast majority of my income is dollar based. And at the minute, the dollar is the global reserve currency. It's one of the strongest currencies. And like one of our mentors once said, until it's not, it is. Whereas if I was earning in Turkish lira, then the conversation of multiple currencies is a much more important conversation, because you have a much more unstable currency, especially in these current times. So having had this conversation a couple of years ago, if someone was earning in Turkish lira, then it would have been far more prudent for them to hold a second currency, because it hedged against their currency collapsing. So you set this financial security level, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you might have all the answers. So we are going to kind of formulate some bits and bats around there. But I would love, as a piece of home play for each person, not necessarily to share, but for themselves, to go through some basic questions for this, because then you can start to find out just how much you may be financially gambling. And one of those might be how much cash reserves you have that you keep intentionally, which is very different from an investment pot. So you might have some money tied up in, I don't know, a locked up ISA for a year. That isn't cash reserve. That's an investment. Just because it's in fiat, GBP or USD doesn't change anything. So how much cash have I got? Is it in different currencies? Does that matter? Is my cash only in crypto, or is it some of it in fiat? I was 100% crypto for quite a while. And then we realized the stress of suddenly needing fiat was just too much stress for us. And we were like, what are we doing? Because there's a big process to get chunks of money out of crypto into fiat land. So we learned from that and we adjusted. Sorry for all the dogs in the background. They love to chat to each other at this time of night. So where's my cash? How much have I got? What pots have I got? How long would that last for? Is that enough? How long do I want it to last for? Of the 100% of the money that I earn, how many different ways do I earn that? So a job is one. So if 100% of your money is a job, then that is not a diversified income. If some of you on here have mentioned passive income streams that you've got, cool. Well, what percentage of your income is passive, or these streams? And passive is a very questionable world in passive income, but you know what I mean, alternative income streams. And of that, what percentage? So it might be 50% of my income's a job, and I have 3 second income streams and one's 20, one's 20, one's 10. Okay, we've got some numbers now. Then play the what if game. Richard talked about that. Like, what if this one collapsed? How long would I survive for? Which also asks the question, how reliant am I on it? Because you can earn passive income to live and earn passive income to reinvest. Very different situations. So these sorts of questions get you somewhere to answering what is your financial security level. We cover a lot of this in the course that we've already done, but we're just kind of reiterating it simply. We're just honing in on this one now, because when you have some of those, you'll start to be able to look at this column D, this red one, to maybe see if you are at D, or can you answer this question? Can you afford a major income stream ending for a period of time? And if the answer is that, maybe you are more in E. Rich, you want to put any comments on that before we open up?
I think again, it's looking back to if all the things I kind of briefly outlined that are happening in the world right now. And I think that it's been able to sense make whether any of those are realistically going to affect your life in this way. And so if you look at, say, for example, I look at the sector that you earn your job from or your business is in, yeah, and say, could this be affected by what's going on in the world, whether it's inflation or recession or anything like that? If we have either those two things that go on much longer, the answer is going to be yes. So you have to say, how secure is my job, and ask those sort of questions. And I think the pensions crisis, for example, that seems to be happening at the moment and is briefly averted. If I'm relying on a pension for my income, how exposed is that to the issues that is happening right now? And is that going to affect my income stream? And so it's really kind of just being very, very clear, as we said, that looking at each of those income streams that you've got and going through that exercise. And if you haven't got your own personal P&L that you're kind of following, your own personal profit and loss, we can share how we do it, which we did share on the course. We've got a sheet. We can do that. You can do that. But you need to know those numbers, right? If you don't know those numbers and you're not clear about it, and you don't know how exposed any of those one things are, then right now you are financially gambling because you just don't know. Once you do know, you might still be financially gambling, but at least you can start to think about how you're going to start hedging and start doing something about it. So I think I just wanted to frame that because it's kind of, we can go down too deeply on both sides of the things. We can think too personally about things, but without, not really thinking, oh, well, that's not going to affect me, or this isn't going to affect me. Like I said before, I don't think we've ever had something quite so significant on the macroeconomic landscape at the moment, with so many things converging, and it feels to me, like I say, only going to go one way. So it's just kind of thinking, what if, and knowing that and really understanding it.
Awesome. Gordo wishes to share on thoughts that are just kind of coming up for him as a result of what we're discussing. Let me find the button.
Yeah.
There we go. Cool, man.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, this always kind of happens in these meetings. I go, oh shit, yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah, I'm gambling. Most of my money is into passive income schemes. I've been in a few other things where I have got burnt previously, and I do have what am I saying? Half my investments are in passive income, half of it's in crypto. Let's say a third of each, and then a third is in gold and silver. So I have got a bit there, but my work over the last few years has really decreased. I've lost a lot of it because of COVID, and yeah, I have things at worst come, I have to sell. That's the thing that's happening. I've got equipment and stuff and other bits and pieces. So I'm gambling, aren't I? And it's probably just I keep having these wake up calls and then get enthusiastic to change it, and then it's like I get distracted and then I'm off doing something else again. So yeah, I kind of probably need to look at what to do and how to start being a bit more sensible and edging my money in a more sensible way, spreading it out in a more sensible way.
I really appreciate your honesty there, Gordo. I really do. And remember, the precursor to clarity is always confusion, and the bit between confusion and clarity is awareness and acceptance, and that's never going to change. I probably should find a new metaphor, but I always say a dick doesn't know he's a dick until someone says you're a bit of a dick, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I am a bit of a dick, aren't I? And we've either had friends go through that, experience it ourselves, and you can replace that adjective for whatever you want. Like, you just don't know until you know. And when you know, it just feels a piece of information you're not aware of, or that you're like, oh, I should have. Oh, there's no shoulds. We go through this. The question is, the more you can go through it, the stronger your willpower to just own it next time and deal with it and go through it. And it's just another one of those key things of life that we learn as we get a bit older. The good thing for yourself, Gordo, is I would rather be at financial gambling than financial ruin.
Yeah. But funny enough, you know, say I'm like, you know, this is an eye opener to me and stuff like that. But I actually feel really positive. And I think, and I'm just starting to get into this flow at the moment where I'm just like thinking a lot more positive, and I believe that is half the battle. I really do. I mean, people might think I'm crazy, but I think if I feel I'm going to be all right, I'm going to be all right, you know. And maybe that might not be financially at that moment. I might lose everything, but I feel like deep down, no matter what happens, I'm going to be all right.
So you could almost argue that that's like mental sovereignty. What we were talking about there is like, I own my mind, and I'm saying that no matter what this physical world gives, I'm okay with it, and I'll be okay. And there's a lot of society don't have that as well. So I think there's definitely kudos points, and it doesn't have a monetary value to it, but there's huge correlations between people who think they're going to be okay and the fact that they can weather those storms.
Yeah, and then why I'm here now as well is that, is this what helps me learn, and and I pick up things, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, and this helps so much with my financial sovereignty. I mean, it's the biggest part of my financial sovereignty since I started doing this. So it's like just talking with everyone and listening to what other people say. It's like I've gone to 12-step programs and all that stuff, and everyone shares and everyone starts laughing when someone says something because they've been there themselves. And this is kind of what this is in the financial thing for me. It's a bit
we need to add
12-step
another 3 then.
Well, are you joking me? We've got enough with 9. But yeah, like, it's not too dissimilar. What's the first step of the 12 steps? What's the first thing an alcoholic must do is accept you're an alcoholic. Like that. I think that's why when we did the first steps at the bottom, it says acceptance. Like, accept you're at financial ruin. And if you can't, then that's where we begin. So let's use what you've just shared there, Gordo, because I want to use what you've shared to kind of answer all those 4 questions that we want to cover, which is that you've become aware that I'm just going to share my screen again because we might type a few things. Share screen. I do miss having 2 monitors, but all right. So you've become aware that you're at this place, the one that's in red, the financial gambling, the complacency, and you're relying on pretty much. Then, if your work's been going down, would you say you're more reliant than before now on those other 2 crypto income streams? I'm asking Gordo there. Sorry, you can give us a thumbs up if you want. Or unmute. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I heard it. Yeah. So, and then one of your questions also was around XRP and holdings, and everyone will have different views on all of this. But I remember someone saying, I think it was Raoul Paul, and Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, and he said that when you're entering a bear market, or I'm going to reframe that to when you're entering great times of uncertainty, don't focus on assets, focus on cash flow. Is that what he said, Rich?
Yeah. I mean, that's there's doubling down on the cash flow in times like this. You've got security, but also, as they term it, dry powder to take advantage of when there's blood in the streets, as it were.
And also to just live. Like, one of the reasons we for My Life with Christina, that we've created pools of money that once of a day I would have, spat at and be like, oh, why would you do that? Like, almost because I was so anti-fiat in a way, is because I may be anti-fiat, but I'm pro requiring the ability to live with less stress. Like, I would like less stress in my life. I think that would be very good. And one of the things that we realized was, by having our beliefs as strong as they were, we were harming ourselves as well. We were creating unnecessary pressure and tension in ourselves, in our relationship, in the processes we had to take. So we looked at these things and said, okay, well, what are the things that we need to do that? And we were at the time asset rich, we were cash flow poor. And I was like, this is stupid. This is that old meme of the crypto dude that's invested, what does it say, 200K portfolio, $20 to live this month, and he sat in a spacesuit on a mattress in a squat, because all of the money's in crypto and not assisting with life, so to speak. So where am I going with this? It's
about timing, isn't it? I think it speaks to a little bit of what Gordo mentioned earlier and what you're talking about as well. It's like, I think we're all on this call because we believe in crypto as an alternative. Some cryptocurrencies, and we've got a different opinion on that, to provide a different, more democratic and fair society. And that's what that's why this folded out of sense making into a crypto call for a while. But it's about timing, and is it, timing yourself and timing for crypto of itself. You need certain things right now, and that means you need to, unless you live in a particular place in the world where there's a complete crypto economy, you still need to spend your money in fiat. So therefore, you need cash. You need cash, and you need it in whichever currency is the most important to you, and potentially balance it. And just think about those things. But are we at the point at the moment where we can have a crypto economy that we can all operate in? No, we can't. So we've got to make a decision at that point. It's like, there's something I believe in enough here in order for me to be in this space, but there's something that I need right now, and in the short term, until that I can put myself in that situation so that I can completely operate in that crypto economy if it exists and if I want to. But it's timing at the end of the day, and it's like thinking, well, what do I need right now and in the short term, given the things that are happening.
I lost you then, Rich.
Sorry, mate.
Okay, so then coming back to those, let's make sure that we can bring in those questions regardless. Then, so one of the things that was in my mind of something that you shared there, Gordo, was around not wanting to sell, but needing to sell all of a sudden. That's why I was bringing up the pools of money. I just remembered not wanting to sell, but needing to sell because you need to survive. And I've definitely been in those situations before. So when I started to relook at my portfolio, Rich, I know you've done a big relook at your portfolio recently. Is why we talk about shrimpy. I suddenly became, I'm only interested in top tiers. That's it. Like, I'm only interested in those. And I would use shrimpy to kind of just make sure I wasn't keeping my eye off the ball. If something moved from 12 to 10 to 8 to 1 and is moving up the charts, I wanted to capture some of that rise, but I also didn't want to hold on to something as it dropped all the way down, as has happened with some of those tier ones that were at the top last year. So the pools of money mean that you have a longer period of time to top them up. If you're only living hand to mouth over this week or this month, then decisions have a lot more weight behind them because you don't have those funds to do something about it. So having those pools really, really helps. And to give a direct answer on XRP, and it's rare you get direct answers from us on these calls, I was a massive XRP holder for a long time, and everything else was crap. And then I've got questions of morality in and around XRP and the banker's coin and everything. But the way I see it is, if XRP is to do what they say it's going to do, which is all of the money, whatever, however many trillions of dollars, and you divide it by the number of coins, is 589 per token. If that really is to happen, you only need 1,200 XRP tokens to be a millionaire. That's it. So my Gordo was like, so Gordo, you might be a 10 times over trillionaire. I don't know, but just really look at things and go, why am I holding it and what for? Because whilst I have held on to tokens for whatever reason, belief, greed, future, all sorts of stuff, I've missed out on so many other opportunities, so many. And I've recently been going through one this week of like, why am I doing that whilst all this is happening over there? And so you may choose to go, right, well, you don't have to change your view in XRP, but if you're going to be let's say you're already a 500, half a billion, actually, with the amount you have, if it works, it would be 500 million. Do you need that much money? Would you be happy with 100 million and reallocate some of those funds somewhere else, especially if your XRP holdings are worth today more than you spent on them? Like if you're not actually taking a loss. Because some of that money can be reallocated into either different streams of income, if that's what you're into. It might be interested in catching some of the coins as they go up. You might hold it as dry powder, but really re-questioning some of those portfolio choices to see if they still meet up with what you need right now, because there's no point holding on to something as a maybe if it's impacting your life to hold on to it. That would be my personal view of it anyway, what I would do in my circumstance. And Rich, I don't know if you've got other thoughts on those sorts of things when it comes to holding assets for longer durations.
I think it's easy to hold on to them once you haven't been through certain cycles, and I think a lot of people, not everybody, a lot of people like the the shuffling and hustling that you get with smaller cap coins and playing that game and going through that whole thing. But after a certain amount of time, a lot of people will want to make their life simpler, and so you end up coming down to holding things because you believe in them, whatever that means to you in terms of belief, in terms of a different society, or what that coin can do, or how it can financially impact your life. In relation to XRP, I think I'm the same. I used to have a lot more, and I've still got my what if bag, and that's because the question I asked is, what if? Do I really want to get rid of it all? But I got rid of it to reinvest into some other stuff, which has now given me the cash that I need, which is my pot of cash that's going to see me through the what if scenario if the world goes to hell in a handcart and all my income streams go pop. So it's kind of been an effect that you kind of go through. But I think if you're holding something and you're not sure why you're holding it, you don't totally believe in it, then ask the question, do you think, is it going to go up or down? And what do I actually need more than something, that's just sitting there? What do I actually need right now? And what haven't I got? So I think the what if scenario is we're very, very keen that people do hold enough cash to see them through 3 to 6 months worth of expenditure. And I think I finished last call on saying that phrase, act broke, and go through that kind of exercise to kind of think, well, what would be the minimum that I could survive on from my expenditure point of view? What things are fluff in my monthly expenditure that I can do without, and I can get a real then sense of what I can do, what I actually need. And then that number can kind of change. You might think at the moment, oh shit, I'm spending $5 grand a month, $6 grand a month, $7 grand a month, whatever it is on all my expenditure. But when you actually look at it, and on the course we call it the Starbucks number. It's like, if I go and spend money on Starbucks every single day and a baguette at Pret a Manger, or whatever it is, I'm spending that much money a day. If I get that out of my life, and there might be a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm kind of spending money on I don't need to, that number that your real expenditure might actually come down and not be such a daunting number that's just going to make you stick your head in the sand and think, I'm never going to achieve that. So there's a number of exercises you can kind of go through. I know that span out of the question about XRP there, but my point of that, I suppose, is, am I holding XRP when it has actually risen in price in the last month, basically? Yes, it could go up from here, depending. There's lots of different things that could potentially happen. But should I be capturing some of those profits for another reason? And another reason for you might be, yes, I need cash. I need cash so that I can survive a what-if scenario.
Would you agree, Rich, actually, for financial security, you can be at financial security with no assets, multiple income streams, no hard, the only assets being cash pools, let's just say. But you could be at financial security if you had a handful of income streams, they were fairly diversified, you've got cash reserves sat back there. There's no requirement at the financial security step 5 to actually have assets like property.
No, I think it's what's important to you and what you believe in at the end of the day. And it all comes down to your personal circumstances. You can still have financial security. I guess, would you have financial? I mean, if you're sitting on, at the end of the day, if you're sat wholly in cash, if that was what you were suggesting, them, I've got a lot of cash reserves and all that. If I'm sat wholly in cash, then I'm just open to inflation.
Yeah,
so my money is my cash is getting deflated. Well, the value of it has become deflated because inflation is going up. So if inflation is they say it's 10%, I would say, and right now they say inflation in the UK is what 9% or 10%, whatever it is. Double that, because that's what the real effect on your money is. And so your money is being deflated at 20% a year. So if you're just sat in cash, then that's the effect. You're losing 20% a year. If you're sat in assets, they might go down. If you believe long term they're going to go up, then that's your belief system. You can handle that. But you've the holding money for 3 to 6 months, you're not going to feel that the inflationary or deflationary effect on your actual cash as much as you would if you were holding in everything was in cash, just sitting there waiting for something to happen. I think it's about diversification, at this point, and people talk about risk on assets and risk on assets. Bitcoin, it would be a risk on assets, but in crypto world, it's less of a risk on asset. And in a financial crisis, risk on assets go first. And so anything that's risky than Bitcoin is going to drop a lot harder. So you have to be prepared for the fact we've already seen a big drop and potentially it could drop further. It might not. It's a really hard question because from a sense-making perspective, my understanding is we're seeing a decoupling from the stock market. So the crypto market is slowly decoupling. Well, it's shown that it's not been as affected as badly as the stock market has in the last few months. Well, to me, that's quite a good sign that it could potentially go the other way. And so I think I shared in the Telegram group the other day that there was challenges getting hold of gold and silver for people at the moment. As people start panicking about their money being deflated, their assets being deflated, they get a flight to safety. A flight to safety traditionally for 5,000 years has been gold. and then silver when people can't get hold of silver. And I think, well, if you can't get gold and silver, where are other people going to go? It's going to be property potentially and Bitcoin. That's personally what I believe, and so that's what it could potentially happen, but everything could drop in the meantime. But I think that's the most important thing. The financial security is how financial security is defined by you, because you're the one that is sitting there in your life. We can't say what does financial security mean to you specifically, but I think everyone should be able to assume that everyone would sleep much better at night knowing they could pay their mortgage or their rent for 6 months, right? Or 3 months or 6 months or whatever it would be. And they can put food on the table, whatever that means. So that's the minimum to me is financial security.
Excellent. Good roundup there of stuff. So as we're coming to a close here, I'm going to make sure we're bringing those last few questions as well. I want just to make sure we're just reiterating. I know it's a heavy call, and it's a heavy call because of where we first had our questions before the call, me and Richard, which is what's What's our role within this? And it's a self-prescribed role because no one's giving it to us and no one's asking us at the same time. But it's like, what's important? And it really comes down to, that's why we wanted to make that one red and really talk about financial security, because we really want to hammer that home. Because it's the most important thing that in a year, I said this on the last call, I wouldn't want someone in the FLT community to come and go, I wish I'd have acted on it sooner. Because then that got me thinking, well, what could we do to help to encourage that act? I want to link this though to what somebody said about how do you deal with emotions and the mentality of the roller coaster, everything that's going on. And I would say, besides obviously community and conversation, having agreed with yourself what that financial security level is and starting to work towards it will massively change the decisions you make. And at the same time, when stuff is occurring, I've found I'm calmer. I'm calmer because I know what I'm doing. So that means someone can bring along to me a shiny, great thing. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Now's not the right time. Or I can look at it, but only if it's within a certain set of parameters for me to look at, or meets a certain grade. And so all of a sudden, decision-making becomes easier, which is similar to like when you agree what your values are for life or your relationship or your business. All decisions become easier because all you got to do is compare the thing that's in front of you with your value structure and decide if it fits. So for us, buying something has to be beautiful. It's got to be made well. We've got to know where it came from. It's got to be multi-purpose. It's got to last a long time, which all of a sudden means that making a buying and a purchasing decision becomes easier to do. So emotions and the mentality of everything going on can become simpler, especially if it's around finances, if you know where you're heading towards. We talk in the program about true north, your true north of what that means for you. And it's made up of a whole host of variables of yourself. So I kind of want to bring that into the mix as a bit of an answer. And then Tim and Jack asked about different investment options. And Rich has just shared quite a lot there on how one might think about what's going on right now. So I'm going to use Tim as an example here because Tim's dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin is a long-term sensible way of increasing whatever you've got, whatever token that would be in this case Bitcoin. But it also rests on the fact that Tim believes in Bitcoin, or I assume Tim believes in Bitcoin because he's buying it. But then to take what Richie's just said there is, well, what's the hedge potentially against that? Because if you're unless you want to take the view that, no, I just want more Bitcoin, in which case you might start looking at, I don't know, bots and trading, but then you're trying to time the market instead of timing the market. And but so then if you're not solely focused on Bitcoin, you would start to ask those bigger questions like, well, okay, what if Bitcoin did drop to $5,000 for a period of time? Still going to survive, but it's $5,000 for a period of time. Do I just keep dollar cost averaging into that? Does that have an impact for me because I might need to sell it and now it's super cheap? So I think that some of the bigger questions are like, well, as you dollar cost averaging into things, is that purely investment or is that also partly living off? Like Gordo talked about the fact that occasionally, sometimes he may have to think about selling something in his portfolio, and that's, you don't want to have to think about that when the markets are down. So if we're going to go through a bit of a tough time for the next period of time, kind of having an idea, well, if it was 3 years, would I be okay with that? If it's 5 years, would I be okay with that? If it's 8 years, would I be okay with that? Just asking these questions to kind of determine how much of an impact that is for you. And the last, I do want to come on to the sense making thing that Paul asked, but I just want to make sure, Rich, if you've got any bits on those last two, mentality and emotions, and all things you may do instead of dollar cost averaging.
I think at this point in time, I can only speak for myself, and I'm kind of just trying to hedge. Hedging is is a dirty word in terms of hedge funds, because they take advantage of up and down markets and all the rest of it. But I think hedging to me just means, am I sort of covered? As we always talk about Simon Dixon, and he always talks about my portfolio, my income streams can work in a bear market, inflationary environment, a deflationary environment, war, recession, inflation, it doesn't matter what's happening. If one thing goes down, another thing is stable or it goes up. And we're not that sophisticated, but are we intelligent enough to look at what we're doing and look at the things that we're in and think and make sense of it ourselves, from a sense-making perspective, and go, how am I being influenced here? And so it all comes back to and like you just said, and what the thrust of this call is, like, where am I now and where do I want to get to? And do I feel safe at this point? Because I don't know if it shows it. I think we copied and pasted it, but I put emotions links to each of those financial steps. And if you're feeling something, then you're at one of those you're potentially at one of those sort of stages, basically. Because if you've made an investment, whether it's dollar cost averaging or not, if you've made an investment and you feel uneasy about it, there's something else in your life that's triggering that feeling, right? And so therefore you've made a decision that's not coming from a place that's you, it's coming from an external input at that point. Something or somebody else has told you to do something and you're not sure about it. And so, or you can be complacent. You go, it's going to be fine. It's going to, like Paul's that happened to Paul, it's happened to me. It's like you have a complacency. That's why we put it at financial gambling, because you've made an assumption that everything's all right and you're at a certain level, basically. So I think from a strategic point of view, it's like just thinking, if this goes down, is enough of my portfolio going to stay the same or potentially have an inverse effect? So like I just talked about, crypto is a risk on asset. So therefore, potentially something like gold in the wider context is going to go up because people are going to, once something drops, it's going to go up. So I feel better knowing that I've got gold and silver in my portfolio to a certain degree, knowing that if crypto goes down, it's probably going to go, it'll go down for a bit, but it'll go up as well. And I've got enough cash. So from a strategy, sorry, you're going to say that, mate?
I was going to say, so in a way, actually, to summarize that last bit, you could say it's not what could I do instead of dollar cost average. It's what should I be dollar cost averaging into? Because I think dollar cost average is a good strategy. It's a simple. Yeah. It's there to remove thought in a way. But what you're going into is what really is going to be the security in 5-10 years, or when, like you say, when something's going down and the risk on assets, people are exiting, they want that hard stuff, and that's why gold potentially may go up when they're dropping.
Well, it's a feeling, isn't it? We've talked about emotions loads, right? And markets move by emotions because you as an individual make emotional decisions, right? And so whatever emotion you're feeling, that should be enough of a trigger for you to kind of understand, start thinking, why do I feel this way? And do I feel safe in the things that I'm in? If not, I need to do something about it. You can dollar cost average into Bitcoin up and down, because over time your overall price of Bitcoin is going to be a much better price than if you waited on the sidelines and made a bad decision. But if you've thought about what the Bitcoin price enough, and if you say, if I've got some cash on the side and I feel secure in my safety income for 3 to 6 months, and I've got some dry powder, as we call it, hooray if Bitcoin drops down to 6k or whatever it is, because I'm going to buy X amount at that point, and I'll know in the future I believe that it's going to go to X. So it can feel like a safety net to you at that point, knowing that you're doing that, but you've accepted all these other things that are happening at the same time.
Awesome. Now, I do want to come to Paul's sense-making question. It's a really good one. How do you start to sense-make all the different people's views and everything that's out there? But it's a really big one, and it's late, and I would definitely like some food. And a long day for me. And there's no point opening stuff up unless we can really get into it. So I've messaged Paul. He's cool with it. I think it's a really good one for us to start on next week, or whenever the next call is in a couple of weeks' time. And maybe that will then also give us a golden thread for like, okay, well, let's really talk about sense making. We had some golden rules we used to talk about with sense making. We can dig those back out again and polish them up, bring them to the surface. So what I would like to finish with, though, we've got a couple of minutes, is if there's anyone on here who just has been impacted it's definitely the wrong word. Who's felt something from this call. It might have stirred something in them. They might feel a bit uncomfortable about it. They might feel excited about it. I would love to hear and maybe just like what your key takeaway is, because I would definitely love everyone to have some brain activity and a few cogs turning to kind of hold that mirror of their own financial space. If anyone wishes to share, I'd love just one or two people with whatever it might have been from this call. I've actually got crickets chirping in the background.
I think, well, again, always a great call just to hear other people's thoughts and input. And but I think you summed it up perfectly when you're saying, is a coin that you're holding impacting, you in a certain way, and starting to kind of look at each of your investments and say, okay, what is this? What value is this adding to me? Is it causing me stress at the minute? And if so, why are you holding it? And kind of really digging in and looking at those kind of things. And that's summed up. That's how I was thinking, but I didn't. You kind of put it into words perfectly. So yeah, it's given me that kind of some more things to start thinking about and to really drill down into. So yeah, thanks as always.
No worry. So Rod, do you want to share?
Yeah, just a quickie. My takeaway from this evening, great meeting as always, guys, is basically shit happens, don't panic.
Shit will continually happen as well.
And on that note, I'm going to have to go because I've got another call. So great,
No
thanks
worries.
a lot, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Rod.
Thanks for your
No worries,
contribution.
man.
Appreciate it.
Jack's message as well. He said he's going to say exactly what Paul said. So Paul, you took the words out of Jack's mouth. I hope there's enough, whether you on this call or whether you're listening back, to just really just take away from things. One of I think it's the second module, we call it taking stock. And I think there's a reason we do it in module 2 there, but I don't think there's ever a time when we can't. It's not good for us to just stop and go, okay, where am I? What am I doing? And where am I going? Because otherwise Paul mentioned earlier, I wrote some of the comments down, we take our eye off the ball, or we just leave it running. There's different words we might use to describe, and it's just good to just have that reflective mirror. Alan, you've got your hand up. You're unmuted as well. Do you want to share?
Yeah, just the big thing that's come up for me is about balance. So that can be balancing my long-term goals with my immediate goals, with my what-if scenario, and just balancing the various different concerns. And that's what's coming out of this, because I think the balance hasn't been right. There's too much in the long-term goals pot and not enough in the living today pot, and not enough in the what if for 3 to 6 months pot. So, and then it's balancing the high risk and the low risk, the short term, the immediate, the long term, the what ifs, and just finding the perfect balance of all of those. Yeah. And I think that's what's come up most for me today.
Oh, so really good shares, Alan. Thank you very much. And that can, in itself, everything you just said, someone can hear that and go, that's a lot of work and it's a daunting task. And you don't have to move through these steps, but any form of sovereignty that you want in your life will take work. And if you don't want it and you want to go for the other end, which is a pure convenience of whatever is just given to you, that has a price to it as well. And so wherever we want to go, we have to understand that it's our decision to make, and we have to we get to reap the rewards of that decision, but we also have to deal with the not consequences, but we have to put in, like you said, balance. Like if you want something at this level, you're going to have to put something in to meet it and match it. Otherwise, wow, who are you expecting to give it to you at the end of the day? So I think they're really beautiful comments what you just shared there, Alan. And I hope that throughout this whole call, I hope people have taken their own little bits of wisdom and their own golden nuggets that they can receive. Jack's just messaged how to handle my investment with different fiat currencies balance. Oh, that's what he's taking away, balancing my portfolio during these times. Perfect. So it's similar to what Alan's just saying there, like really looking at that balance. Like, what do I need short term, medium term, long term? Am I diversified? Asking these questions, then starting to take actions on them. So we're at 3 minutes past. Rich, any final words you want to chuck into the mix?
It just occurred to me then as what Alan was saying there. I think with the way we've often opened these calls is by saying, this is one of the greatest transference of wealth that the world has ever seen. We always kind of relate that to kind of crypto and where that's going. But I think, I guess what I'm thinking in those terms is make sure that you're not at the wrong end of the transference of wealth, because that was the essence of this call. Basically, it's like, don't be that person that falls down those ladder and that wealth has been taken away from you by someone who's hedging better, is managing things better, or manipulating better, or whatever it is. But try and sentiment your way through so that you aren't being transferred against.
Yeah, don't fall down the steps. And if we can stay together and keep communicative and be understanding of where you're at, then it should be possible. Like, we have the space, the time, the skill set, the opportunity. Like, it's literally in front of us. The other end of that greater transference of wealth is that this time we live in, we have never lived in a time where it is so possible in such a short space of time to make life-changing decisions. I know that you can always make life-changing decisions, but the tools at our disposal right now were never existed 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, really, sometimes. So me and Richard and I want to try and keep that wrapper and that container as safe as possible, because it is difficult sometimes. And I would love to see in a handful of years, people in the FLT community reaping the benefits of the decisions that they made today. So I hope with that, you can kind of really give that some thought. And as ever, if you want to comment or chat in the group, we're always there. Next call will be probably in a couple of weeks. We'll just double check, me and Richard, that we're good for a call in 2 weeks' time. And there is a sensible passive income call brewing. It's coming, but again, needs a lot of safeguarding and clarity of what it is. So we can look forward to that as well. And until then, hope you've enjoyed the call. Hope you got a lot from it. Take care, everybody, and we will see you in a few weeks.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, guys.